Hello, beautiful friends in YouTube land. Have you ever wondered if your experiences in love are somehow part of your karma? If you are repeating the same past life patterns again and again? Or even if your partners that you encounter in this lifetime are somehow linked to your past life self? Well, you're not alone in thinking those things if you do. In this video, I hope to shed a bit of light on some of these questions. Karmic astrology in the Vedic system and in the evolutionary astrology system in Western astrology actually holds all the answers to the mysteries of who you are today. In love, in prosperity, in career, in your emotional self, in your hang-ups, your talents, your good and bad luck, and so much more. Karmic astrology actually reveals the why of who you are and why life has turned out for you the way that it has. You know, we're all souls living the embodiment of an energetic moment in time, the time when we were born into this human incarnation and drew our first breath. In fact, the ancients believed that the soul entered the body when we drew our first breath, and it came from the sign rising on the horizon at that moment. So that moment in time fitted perfectly with our soul's readiness for this particular incarnation and our soul's desire for its next step in growth within the Yuga age being played out on the planet at this point in time. We embody the energy that our soul was ready to experience, and it's all summed up in our birth chart, the birth chart of the moment that we were born. It is incredible. Your birth chart is amazing. It is profound. It is thrilling. You know what? When we look at a birth chart, we realize, when we see it through karmic eyes, that our lives are a blessing. They are a gift. They are a chance to evolve and step up the ladder of enlightenment as we learn and grow through this lifetime in readiness for the next one that is to come, out of our past and into our future, if we choose to rise up in this lifetime. In evolutionary astrology, every planet is a story about our soul's journey over many lifetimes with the theme of that particular planet. So, for example, Mercury tells us the story of how our soul has evolved with regard to our capacity to learn and to understand, to use our logic and to communicate. Mars is the story of our soul in relation to Mars themes like courage and passion and vitality and enthusiasm for living. And of course, Venus is the story of our soul's journey with love and relationships. And that's part of what we're going to be exploring in this video today. But first, let's just stop for a moment and consider, if we have spent the last 3,000 to 4,000 years incarnating on planet Earth as a divine soul in human form, during the Kali Yuga, or the Iron Age, which is the most debased, difficult and troublesome age of the 24,000-year Yuga cycle, then it stands to reason that our soul is going to have trauma from even just one lifetime during that dark Kali Yuga Iron Age. Thank goodness that we're actually now leaving the Kali Yuga age for the new Bronze Age as we begin our rise back up in the cycle towards the Golden Age. Hallelujah for that. But let's think about it. Our souls incarnate in this lifetime with wounds from the Kali Yuga incarnations that we've just recently had. And those soul wounds, those imprints upon our psyche, need to be healed, grown through and transformed so we're ready for the next step in the cycle into the next age. This is actually the most important thing that a human can do in this lifetime. Evolve out of the wounds of the Kali Yuga so that we next incarnation arrive at a much higher plane of existence. Now, this includes the wounds to our Venus energy, the wounds to our capacity to have wonderful, loving relationships where love is beautifully given and welcomely received. That's the Venus story in our charts. It's what this video is going to explore, what the past is indicated by our Venus story and what we are here to evolve into and emerge into in the Venus story. Now, before we jump right in, If you enjoy this topic of karma and soul evolution and reincarnation, then you are going to love my Karmic Astrology course. It's available at the Learn Astrology page of my website. In it, we deep dive into all the main karmic indicators and what they mean and how they interact to make us who we are in this lifetime. Everything from the nodes to the moon to Pluto to Saturn and so much more. There are 10 extensive videos and workbooks, and we leave no stone unturned in our exploration of Vedic karma and Western evolutionary astrology. You will love it. It's the light bulbs go on, the pennies drop, everything makes sense when you understand our karmic journey. And for a short time only, if you order now, the price is only $150 for all 10 videos, and you get a free goddess report from me exploring the personal influences of the goddesses of the sky upon your life. So that is the asteroids Ceres, Pallas Athena, Juno, Vesta, Hygeia, Adrena, Europa, Pandora, Cassandra, Hecate, and Medea. So if you're interested in that and you want to get your free goddess report as well as explore karmic astrology, then do head to the link in the description below and place your order to be part of the Karmic Astrology course. And if, as this video is talking about relationships and karma, if you're interested in doing a deep dive into understanding relationship dynamics and interactions, I have the mother of all relationship courses also available at my Learn Astrology page for those who are interested. And now let's look at your Venus placement, its Kali Yuga story and its Kali Yuga influence upon you in past lives, and therefore what you need in this lifetime to grow your soul out of that story to a higher vibration in readiness for a much better next incarnation. So let's kick it off with Venus in Aries. I'm intending to put a picture up on the screen of Venus in the sign of Aries. Of course, it can fall in any house of your chart, so do keep that in mind. This is just a general representation of where Venus sits when it's in the sign of Aries on my astro wheel. Now, what it means in past lives, if you have Venus in Aries, is that you likely experienced during the Kali Yuga relationships where intimacy was trodden on by unexpressed anger, rage that was unresolved. Now, that could have been from you to somebody else, or it could have been from somebody else to you. So you had to suppress your anger, let's say, because you were with somebody who was maybe violent or aggressive and made you feel unsafe. So you bottled up your own frustrations and your own anger and subdued it. Rage in your spirit, your heart, that was unresolved and not allowed freedom of expression. Intimacy gets trodden on, of course. I think about, I don't know if everyone's seen the old film from the 90s, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, but one of the characters in that film marries a very abusive man. And she thinks it's all going to be fine and whatever, but she lives a horrific life, abused by this guy. And of course, that can go both ways, male or female, and not sort of pinning abuse onto one party or another. I know many men who have suffered at the hands of women. But the point being, this is an illustration, if you're familiar with that movie, of the desire for intimacy that's trodden on by an angry, violent, aggressive person. So naturally, there was a lot of suffering in that lifetime by anger and rage that you couldn't express, and you couldn't be truly, freely yourself. So what is the resolution that the soul seeks in this lifetime with this Venus placement in Aries? This is through the karmic and evolutionary astrology lens. Well, in this lifetime, there is a desire to actually express your strong emotions, be they positive emotions or negative emotions, whatever, in a loving relationship. So really, a lot of it's about safety, feeling like I can express what I think, what I feel quite freely in this relationship. Relationships in this lifetime for a Venus and Aries person must be all about tapping into you and expanding your courage and your willpower, which was so badly trodden on in the past. And so if you're with a partner and you can't be fully expressive of how you feel and what you think, of your strong emotions. You know, you can't have a little bit of a rage or a rant. You can't express your sadness. You can't express your joys. You have to sort of walk on eggshells all the time, essentially. You are forbidden to be courageous in that relationship. You're forbidden to express your willpower. Then it's not the right relationship for you this lifetime, because your soul is here to experience something different. And so if this is your situation, recognize that your soul journey is more important than a relationship for the sake of relationship. The growth of your soul in this lifetime is everything. And so maybe there's a call to maybe do some counseling with your partner and say, you know, express what you can't express personally just between the two of you. Maybe include maybe a moderator so that the person can actually listen to what you're saying, hear what you're saying, and understand your emotions. And if things are obviously too bad, then there needs to be some perhaps change to the situation made by you. But the bottom line is, this lifetime is about being able to express your emotions, your strong emotions, no matter what they are, in a relationship that's loving and kind, and a relationship that allows you to learn and tap into feelings of courage and willpower. So keep that in mind as you analyze your current relationships or future relationships and how well your soul can evolve in the relationships that you're in. Taurus. When Venus is placed in Taurus, it tells us that during the Kali Yuga, in past lives, you likely experienced relationships that were stiff and rigid, or where sexual contact and intimacy and the power of touch was not wanted. I'll show you where Venus in Taurus sits with the astro wheel here. Now, just imagine a scenario like this. You know, you get married, you think it's going to be all lovey-dovey and affectionate, and you find out that your partner is not interested. And of course, this maybe happened many times in the days when people tried to hide, let's say, their sexuality. So you were a straight male, but for reasons of, you know, pleasing society or doing what was considered societally correct, you married a woman who was perhaps attracted to women, and she wouldn't even have a bar of it, wouldn't go to bed with you or anything. And so there was no affection, there was no sex, because maybe the homosexual factor was subduing things. And that's just one example. Of course, there are many examples of how Venus in Taurus in past lives may have expressed. That's just one scenario. Think about, Rock Hudson and many of the Hollywood actors who married to keep face in a day and age when homosexuality was discouraged. I'm not saying Rock Hudson had his Venus in Taurus, I don't know where it was, but perfect example. So many actors hid their true sexual orientation by marrying. And if you were on the receiving end of that relationship and the intimacy was totally not there, how hurtful would that be? How debilitating, how discouraging would that be as a soul? And it doesn't have to, as I said, include homosexuality. Any relationship that was stiff or rigid or where sexual contact was unwanted would qualify. And so this is the past life soul imprint from the Kali Yuga age that may have scarred your soul, that you're here to evolve out of this lifetime. So what does that look like? Well, Venus in Taurus, its evolutionary soul intent is to be in a relationship that has long-term bonds, because Taurus is a steady, enduring energy, long-term bonds between partners where there is a calm, easy, straightforward connection, and sex life and affection and physical touch flows naturally and easily and desirably between the two people. So obviously, if you're in a relationship and that is not happening, then you're repeating past life patterns, and it's time for you to make a call. I need to change and find a relationship that does allow that to happen so my soul can evolve, or I need to get counseling about this issue with the partner that I'm with. Gemini Venus placements. this is your soul journey with Venus. Well, it's quite an interesting one when Venus is placed in Gemini. It's saying that during the Kali Yuga, in your past lives that you experienced, there was a story that wounded your soul of celibacy or sexual monotony. So maybe, I think of the movie Gone with the Wind, which is a movie I love. Scarlett O'Hara's sister, I think it's Kathleen, decides that since her lover was killed in the Civil War, she's going to go and join the monastery and the church. And she up and commits to celibacy, a life of celibacy in the church. There are many films where that occurs. I think there's a beautiful French film that I highly recommend called Eternity with Audrey Tautou. She's one of the lead actresses in it. Gorgeous film. And in that, one of her children decides they're going to commit to a life of celibacy in the monastery as well. So that can actually be a story of a Venus in Gemini person in this incarnation where you've experienced the celibacy, be it by your own choice, or sometimes celibacy is experienced not through your own free will, but because it was forced upon you. Maybe you never married or never found anybody, you died an old maid or an old bachelor, and you were eternally celibate in that lifetime. So there's a couple of ways, of course, that can play out. Another way that we see Venus in Gemini past lives expressing, and of course a lot of research has gone into the understanding of past lives through past life regression work alongside astrological exploration and study. But Venus in Gemini can also represent past lives where there was sexual monotony, where you were, stuck with a partner who was boring as shit when it came to the bedroom, where you just did not connect, where you just didn't have a unified enjoyment of sexual life. It's not that it wasn't wanted, it's just that there was a mismatch, sexual monotony. So Venus in Gemini, that's the past life expression. And so what does that therefore mean, potentially, for your soul's evolution in this lifetime, Gemini Venus people? Well, you need to be in relationships this lifetime that develop your open-mindedness. And that includes in the bedroom. Open-minded in the bedroom, open-minded in relationship as well. Relationships must feel like Christmas morning to you. You know what it's like. You wake up as a kid and all the presents are under the tree. You just want to unwrap everyone. Now, that doesn't mean that you're fickle in relationships, jumping from one present to another. But it's your chance to enjoy the beauty of relationships this lifetime, because that's what's going to heal your soul and move away from these past life experiences that were somehow wounding to you. So in the story of Kathleen O'Hara, who went off to the monastery in this lifetime, if she reincarnated now, maybe she may actually reincarnate and bump into her deceased lover, who is also reincarnated, and they get to totally enjoy a life of intimacy and delight and joy in being with one another. And it resolves, for example, the celibacy issue from the previous incarnation. But the bottom line is, my Venus Gemini friends, you need to be in relationships this lifetime that open up your mind and heart to love and feel as joyful and excited and delightful as Christmas morning. And if you're not in a relationship that's doing that for you, at least in the beginning, I mean, every relationship ends up feeling like a pair of comfortable slippers over time. But if it's not there, in the first 10 years or so, then it's never going to be there. And maybe it's not the relationship that is going to heal your soul in this lifetime. Venus in Cancer, friends. Well, this is quite an interesting one. Venus in Cancer, it's not a strong placement for Venus to be in Cancer, but it does tell us about the journey of our soul in past lives with Venus and love during the Kali Yuga. And it's quite a challenging one, I have to say, because Venus in Cancer represents that the soul, for some reason or another, was driven to take refuge in some kind of a psychic shell. Think of Cancer the crab with his shell. And there was a need in a past life, my beautiful Cancer friends, to put a shell around your psyche to protect you from the wounds that relationship was inflicting. So this is one of the biggies for past life abuse, past life exploitation, being used. It's really a challenging one. And of course, there's many scenarios that we could present for what that might look like. Maybe you were sold into sexual slavery, in a past life at some stage. Maybe you married somebody who just wanted you for a cooker and a cleaner and they treated you like crap. Soul having to take refuge in sort of some protective shell and shut down feelings of love, feelings of affection, because there was just so much trauma. So Venus in Cancer people, there's often a real need to heal the soul therapeutically in this lifetime, just because of the nature of the past life reflection through Venus being in Cancer. So what is the soul here to evolve into? Well, a Venus in Cancer person needs to be in relationships this lifetime that feel as safe as possible, because they're actually here in this lifetime to heal their inner emotional world from the wounds of the previous Kali Yuga incarnations. So a Venus in Cancer person needs lasting commitments by gentle, nurturing partners. And can I just say from my own experience, the moment the partner ceases to be gentle and nurturing, that's when a Cancer Venus person will run like a little crab, and it's gone. Because the soul is desperate to feel safe in the world. It's only through feeling safe in relationships that a Venus Cancer person can heal. So to be with somebody, you're better off being alone than to be with somebody who is just repeating the past through abuse or exploitation or using you, my beautiful Venus in Cancer friends. So seek out partners that feel safe. This is a kind, gentle person, and I know that my soul will heal with this person. And they're committed to me. They're not about to up and leave me. They're not about to, treat me like a doormat and wipe their boots on me. They're gentle, they're nurturing. If that's who you're with, winner, winner, chicken dinner, my beautiful Venus in Cancer people. You are with the right person to help your soul heal. And vice versa. If you're not with somebody like that, the soul is just repeating past life patterns. Venus in Leo people. Well, when we have Venus in Leo, this is another interesting placement because it tells us that in past lives, the soul in relationship has, and I'm talking really old past lives here too with Leo, like ancient past lives, wounds where you felt rejected, betrayed, where in your relationships you were persecuted or judged. And that left the wound on your soul. I mean, there's many scenarios we can offer for that. But, when you are with somebody that, you feel should be loving you and they're just rejecting you over and over again, or they betray you for someone else, or they don't see. I mean, Leo energy is about, let me shine, see my uniqueness. And when that is not received by the Venus in Leo person in a past life incarnation, it puts a wound on the soul. So again, we have these ancient wounds from rejection, betrayal, persecution, and judgment by our partners. And so what is going to heal us this lifetime, Leo Venus people? Well, it's love. Leo is a very loving sign. And Venus here, goddess of love, says that the evolutionary soul journey is to have love that heals these wounds. And in doing so, that kind of love helps you know your own joy, your own creative expression, and the celebration of who you are. So being with somebody who adores you, cherishes you, values you, Venus in Leo, that's what you need. Because this is not a lifetime of rejection, betrayal, and persecution again. And if you experience that, then you're repeating past life patterns. And it's up to you, not the partner, it's up to you to change your Venus dynamic and make different choices. And, it's better to be by yourself than to be with somebody who causes a repeat in past life patterns. Love that heals you this lifetime. Love that adores you, cherishes you, and values your creative expression and celebrates the beauty of you, my Venus in Leo friends. What could be better? Check your relationship. If you can give a big tick to that, you're in the right relationship to heal your soul. If you're in doubt, maybe it's time to look at getting a little bit of counseling to try and welcome in this valuing of your uniqueness in the relationship that you're in. My Virgo Venus friends, in past lives during the Kali Yuga age, Venus in Virgo tells us the story that you had feelings in relationship of being enslaved within a relational commitment. Maybe you couldn't get out of it, and there are so many stories of this, aren't there, when we look at history. Because we're coming out of the Kali Yuga age where divorce was frowned upon, and so a lot of men and women were stuck in the most horrific of relationships where they're constantly working and trying to provide or trying to serve their partner who doesn't value them, who doesn't see them, who doesn't appreciate them. So people felt enslaved in a marriage. You know, I don't know what my great-great-grandmother's signature was when it comes to Venus, but my great-great-grandmother had 16 children, no twins, no multiple births, all individual. She was pregnant for 42 years of her life, and I don't know how she did it. They all lived to adulthood, and we have a family photo of her sitting in a chair, probably in her 70s or 80s. She looked exhausted. She was just sitting there like this. She looked like she'd been enslaved her whole life. Now, whether or not she and her husband were madly in love, I don't know. I can only assume maybe they were. They had 16 kids, perhaps. That's an indication. But the look on her face embodied a feeling of, I'm just done with this life. I have been serving and enslaved to other people my whole life long. I'm sure you can think of many scenarios where somebody in a marriage or a relationship felt like they were enslaved to the other person. I think I love movies, and one of the movies I grew up loving was Gwyneth Paltrow in Sliding Doors. And her partner, for a lot of that film, was doing nothing. Just flouncing around at home, having an affair here, claiming to be writing some novel. And she was the one earning the money, going out to work every day, taking care of the bills and so forth. In a sense, that's modern enslavement. Somebody else is, living the high life while you do the hard yards. That's another example. I'm sure you can think of many, my beautiful Virgo friends. But with Venus in Virgo, there is a evolutionary soul intent in this lifetime to be in partnerships where both the people in the partnership are actually looking to grow and work together through mutual care. So instead of, Gwyneth Paltrow's partner in Sliding Doors sitting at home doing sweet FA, he would be out there working to build a life together with her. And this whole story would be completely different, wouldn't it? We wouldn't have the movie. But this is the idea here for Venus in Virgo people, to be in partnerships that are collaborative, where you're working together, where you're both trying, to achieve the same life goals. And it's very much about the work ethic between the two of you, working to create a life together and working to care for one another in a way that's balanced and harmonious. Virgo is an energy of imbalance, and the following sign, Libra, is the energy of the balance. And so that's why in so many teachings, Virgo is all about, conflict and debt and lack of education or illness, where things are out of whack and not harmonious. So Virgo is always seeking to perfect what is not right. And so this applies. Venus in Virgo, the soul intent is to be in a balanced, harmonious relationship. And that is what needs to be worked on in this lifetime, because that is your way out of repeating past life patterns of enslavement. So I hope that makes sense to my Virgo Venus friends. And if you find that you are in a relationship where you feel like you're enslaved, then you're repeating those past life patterns. And you need to change those past life patterns so that your soul can grow and evolve into a much better next incarnation for relationships. Libra Venus friends. Well, this is such an interesting one. Libra Venus people in past lives were considered or are considered to have been partnered with people who are crass, crude, boorish, bogan, redneck. I mean, use any descriptive word you like. But Libra is the sophisticated sign of the zodiac. And for a Libra and Venus person to be with somebody who was embarrassing, you'd go out for dinner and they'd be farting and burping in front of everybody, or they'd tell crass jokes, or they were just really uncouth. Oh my God, the shame for a Venus Libra person. And that has left its own soul wound. Believe me, I mean, it sounds all light and silly, but after a lifetime with somebody who is an absolute bore, it's totally embarrassing, you would be so, I don't know, just destroyed in the soul, I think. Like what is the point of relationships? I just am embarrassed all the time, or I'm shamed all the time. And shame is a wounding energy. So it's nothing to be joked about lightly. This is a wound that Libra and Venus people carry. And so what is the soul intent in this lifetime? It's to be in partnerships that are more Libran, where you relate in sophisticated ways, courteous ways, romantic ways, with lots of empathy towards one another and respect for one another, where there is no shame. So Libra, if you find that you're in a relationship and your partner is constantly embarrassing you, saying something that makes you just want to sink into the floor, if, you love to go to the symphony and all they want to do is, I don't know, put on Van Damme movies or something, this is not a match made in heaven, and it's not a match that's going to heal your soul of the shame wounds of the past life. Once again, to be in a relationship this lifetime that heals the soul for a Libra and Venus person, relationships have to be sophisticated, courteous, romantic, and empathetic. So if you're not in that kind of relationship, maybe some marriage counseling would help. And if you're looking for a partner, my Libra and Venus friends, make sure it's somebody who can lift your soul out of its wounds and into something that is so healing and beautiful and loving in readiness for your next incarnation. Scorpio Venus friends. Well, when Venus is in Scorpio, it's telling us that some of the past life experiences to do with relationship that were had included lies and deceptions, where your previous life partners pulled the wool over your eyes, deceived you. They put up a big front and you didn't know what was truth and what wasn't truth, where maybe they had an affair and they lied about it your whole lifetime and you just had to put up with it, maybe feeling deep down that something's not quite right here. Scorpio is a very perceptive sign. So Venus in Scorpio kind of indicates deep down your soul knew that you were being lied to, that you were being deceived. And of course, that's very, very wounding to the soul. So what is the evolutionary soul intent with a Venus in Scorpio this lifetime, in this incarnation? Well, it's to have relationships that are fundamentally honest. Because what you're here to do is to reestablish the ability to trust that was broken in past lives. So Venus Scorpio friends, if you're with someone and you can't trust them, or you feel that they're lying to you, that is either it's a repeating pattern from past lives, and they are, or it's an indication that your soul has not yet learnt to trust your partner based on that you were so wounded in past lives. So you're cynical, you see lies everywhere. Now, it may or may not be that your partner is lying or deceiving you. That's, for you to figure out. Venus in Scorpio isn't saying your partners will always lie to you, not at all. But it's saying that through relationships, you need to have an honest relationship and re-establish your ability to trust. You need to be able to be what Stephen Forrest suggests is naked in every sense of the word with your partner. This is me, good, bad, or otherwise, and this is you, good, bad, or otherwise. We see who each other is, and we trust each other, and we love each other, and we're honest about our flaws and about our strengths. We're honest with each other. So, this is a toughie, Venus Scorpio people, because you need to be with trustworthy people. And a lot of the time you might be doubting or lacking in trust, even of people who are trustworthy. So my beautiful Venus in Scorpio friends, counseling is always a good idea. Having honesty as the best policy between you when you set up a relationship and establish a relationship, making a vow to one another to be honest and doing your best to live that way yourself, learning to trust the other person is perhaps the only way forward. It is difficult because lies and deceptions, how do you know the truth? But that is the journey of the soul this lifetime, to learn to trust and rest in that trust with a partner. Venus in Sagittarius, friends. Well, this is a little like the opposite sign, Venus in Gemini. But Venus in Sagittarius suggests that in past lives, during the Kali Yuga, your incarnation in your past lives, that there was some sort of sexual restraint or sexual boredom. Intimacy was goddamn boring. Like, oh, here we go again, lie back and think of England. Terrible statement, but that's what it may have been like for Sagittarius people. There's a wound here where your sex life is just so uninteresting to you. You were not engaged. You were not participatory. You tapped out. Relationships also with Venus in Sagittarius were probably in past lives in some way settled for, not treasured. So, everybody went off to war. Only 1 or 2 boys came back. This boy happens to be interested in me. There's 20 girls for every guy because half of our male population was killed off. All right, I'll marry you because, who else am I going to have? I'll settle for this even though I'm not in love with you, even though I'm not attracted to you. If you think about it, if in that scenario, she probably should have just settled for being single and let him fall in love and find somebody who did care about him. But leaving the semantics aside, this person in this scenario I'm giving you has settled for a relationship and then finds it boring or restrained. Also, and I think I mentioned this, a Venus in Sagittarius person can sometimes not only settle for a relationship, but they can also find themselves in a relationship where they're not treasured, not seen, not valued, where they have been settled for. So, the gentleman that in the scenario I just gave you may be the one who was now incarnated with Venus in Sagittarius because he was not treasured. He was just, you'll have to do because there's nobody else. It's a not treasured, settled for situation from one party to another. So it's a toughie. It's a real toughie, and it's a wound on the soul because deep down our souls know. Our souls know if we're not being treasured. Our souls know if we've just been settled for. Again, I think of Gone with the Wind and Scarlett, who is in the throes of a destroyed civilization and trying to claw her way back to a measure of safety and security, ends up marrying her sister's beau, what was his name? Frank, and settling for a life with Frank. Frank would have to have known that Scarlett didn't treasure him, Scarlett didn't love him, and that Sue Ellen was the one who really did. Anyhow, illustrations aside, what is the evolutionary soul intent for a Venus and Sagittarius person? Well, they need to be in relationships that will widen their worldview, restore broken faith, and delight in love. Basically the opposite of what they had before. They need to be in relationships where they are treasured or where they treasure the partner. Relationships that aren't boring, aren't sexually restrained. They widen your view of intimacy and connection and partnership. And with that widening of the world for them, it restores their broken faith. It creates delight in love. So my dear Venus Sagittarius friends, if you're with somebody and you find that they are restrictive on your life in terms of restrained and boring in the bedroom, or you feel like you've just settled for this person because, hey, they'll do, I just want to be married, or I just want to, have a partner. If you're settling for them, or if you feel like they've just settled for you, they don't really love you, then that's not the right relationship to heal your soul in this lifetime. Get some counseling or move on, because it is more important to heal the soul in readiness for the next incarnation than simply to be in relationships that are not treasured, relationships that are settled for, my dear Sagittarius Venus friends. Venus in Capricorn, my Venus in Capricorn friends, during the Kali Yuga age, it has been observed through past life regressions and astrological studies and correspondences that people with Venus in Capricorn in past lives during the Kali Yuga age were subjected to immature relationships. Now, that could have been that you were the immature one in a past life, or that your partner was the immature one, or maybe both of you were. But because of this immaturity, there was an energy of the failure of the relationship, the abandonment of the relationship that also form part of this prior life dynamic. Now, think about Romeo and Juliet, 13 and 14 years old. If that had gone the distance, if they'd lived to old age, maybe Juliet would have found out that Romeo was a complete tosser. Maybe he was never going to step up and be a provider and someone she could rely on and a good father, because he was just too immature. When you get married at 13, 14, who knows? You're both immature when you start out. But this is the dynamic. One person, or maybe both people, never grow up. They're always acting like children or acting like spoilt brats or whatever. And if that's, the other person in the dynamic in the past life, that makes you, as the mature one, feel like you failed. The relationship failed. You feel like you're abandoned. You're the one who's having to do all the heavy lifting and carry the heavy load. Venus in Capricorn is a toughie for past life soul wounds. So for a Capricorn Venus person, this evolutionary soul intent is to have a grown-up relationship in this lifetime that's all about integrity, all about solid commitment, all about maturity. It's about, stepping into the adult world with a partner willingly. So do some self-evaluation, Venus in Capricorn. Are you a bit immature in relationships? Do you not take on the responsibilities that you should take on? Then you're actually repeating a past life pattern. Or maybe you're with a partner who behaves that way, and that's still a repeat of a past life pattern. It means you have to grow up, partners have to grow up, and in doing so, that's when you have the beautiful solid commitments, Venus in Capricorn, that allow your soul to heal and grow and blossom and move into a higher level, more high vibrational soul journey in readiness for your next incarnation. Venus in Aquarius, friends. This is actually one of the toughies. When Venus is in Aquarius, it has been seen through past life regression study associated with astrological research that people with Venus in Aquarius have had really challenging past lives where they feel like they were sexually used but never seen or valued. Being in a sexual relationship that was not freely chosen, Aquarius Venus people. We see that happening in the world today. Child brides, do they get to freely choose to be with some old fart? It's horrific and tragic. It's heartbreaking, but those little girls are going to probably reincarnate in the next life with Aquarius and Venus. There's also the feelings of being sexually used can actually cross over to, people who were prostitutes in past lives, or not that I have anything against sex workers, that's not the case, but I know there's one old story written by Bryce Courtenay called The Potato Factory, and they made a film in Australia about this particular Bryce Courtenay novel, and it was about a woman who she was brilliant mathematically. She could have been an accountant, but because of her position in society and certain really unfortunate circumstances, she had to turn to prostitution to get by and make a living. This was in sort of Victorian England. And the madam that she worked for, I remember one particular scene in the film, the madam that she worked for was demanding that she go and sleep with a man who was obviously covered with the plague or the pox or something. And she knew if she went and slept with that guy, she would get that disease and probably die herself. And if there is ever a more clear example of being sexually used but never seen or valued, that story sums it up. Just to finish the story out, she never did. She ran away and refused to sleep with him. Story went on. She came out to Australia and established, I think, a brewery in Tasmania. Anyhow, I don't even know if it was a true story or not. It may have been. Bryce Courtenay did like to draw from real life. Horrific. And so many stories like that in history, of course. But just to reiterate the point, Venus in Aquarius, feelings in a past life of being sexually used, never seen or valued, and being subjected to sexual relationships that were not freely chosen. So what is the evolutionary soul intent this lifetime? Well, these wounds are huge. These are really big psychological wounds, PTSD from relationships in past life, essentially. What it's all about in this lifetime is moving into the support of your own individuality and experiencing a lifetime that guarantees your personal freedom because you didn't have it in past lives. So for some people, for some Venus in Aquarius people, that can look like choosing not to be in relationships, saying, I just can't do it this lifetime. And maybe that's the right choice because the soul needs to heal from these really heavy-duty wounds in a past life. Anything that supports your individuality and your personal freedom. So if you can be in a relationship with a partner where they just adore your uniqueness and they facilitate and allow you to be fully yourself, whatever that happens to look like, and where they guarantee you your personal freedom. If you want to go and live, for 2 months on a mountainside in Nepal, they're happy for you to go and do that. You go and do you and be you and live you. That is the kind of relationship you need to be in, where you are given freedom. And that will heal the soul in this lifetime. If you're in a relationship where that kind of thing doesn't exist, where you can't do that, it's actually going to be wounding or non-healing to the soul. And certainly, to take things to another level, if you're in a situation this lifetime where you are again being sexually used, not seen, not valued, and in a relationship that you haven't freely chosen to be in, then you are repeating the past. Very wounding and destructive to the soul. Sometimes Venus and Aquarius people, sometimes the trauma from past life experiences can actually lead you in this lifetime to sort of disassociate in sexual situations. And so we do find that a lot of Venus and Aquarius people function in the porn industry or in the sex worker industry because there's this capacity to disassociate from intimacy and not see it as an expression necessarily of love or connection or belonging or value, but it's very mechanical. And that is actually coming out of past life woundings, past life hurts and traumas. And so, not that there's anything wrong. I don't judge anybody who's in those situations, but I would encourage you to explore your soul and dig deep into your psychological understanding of why you've chosen those paths. Is it because of past life experiences? And are you healing those wounds that exist there? Because that's the most important thing that a human can do in this lifetime, is to heal those wounds from past lives so that we move into better expressions of love and relationship in our next incarnation. And finally, Venus in Pisces people. What is your past life expression likely to be, or your soul wounds likely to be, when you have Venus in Pisces? Now remember, Venus is exalted in Pisces as a placement, but that doesn't mean that during the Kali Yuga you didn't have challenging experiences that wounded the soul just the same. It probably indicates, Venus being exalted in Pisces, that you have a really powerful ability to overcome those soul wounds in this lifetime. But I digress. Let's go back to what these soul wounds may have stemmed from. Again, we have a placement for monastic celibacy. In fact, the mutable signs all tend to have that kind of underlying theme to them, not being engaged in sexual dynamic or an intimacy dynamic. So that's one thing. So again, Kathleen O'Hara running off to join the monastery, is another scenario that could look like Venus in Pisces in her reincarnated chart. But there's a couple of other expressions that Venus in Pisces also can have. It can be wounding to the soul from bereavement or loss of a partner. And again, the story of Kathleen O'Hara, it's fictional, but it's relevant just the same. Her partner, or her love of her life, her future husband, was killed in the Civil War. And that caused her to be so wounded and so traumatized that she ran off to join the monastery. Wounding, bereavement, loss, and celibacy. Also, Venus in Pisces can be an indication that you may partner with somebody who believes that sex is only for creating babies. So there's this disassociation in a sense, not in an unloving way, but in a perhaps a disappointing way, or maybe you feel disillusioned, like your partner doesn't want to make love to you because maybe they're super duper Catholic and they only believe in no contraception of any sort, and so you only had sex when you wanted to create a baby. I know that there was probably many past life stories of that sort of thing before the invention of contraception and the using those facilities that we use today. So there's probably many scenarios where that was the case. In fact, I do know of a family in the town I grew up with who were ardent Catholics, did not believe in any kind of birth control, and refused to accept that, and likely had that exact story. And that was in the modern age. So they only had a few kids too. So very interesting. But that's another expression of Venus in Pisces. So of course, all of these things can cause wounds to the soul when it comes to relationships. So what is the evolutionary soul intent here in this lifetime, in this incarnation? Well, the soul for a Venus Pisces person wants to experience a bond with another person that becomes a beautiful expression of their soul unity, soulmate connection, and sexual connection coming together. I've often said that the Pisces expression of love is very different to the Scorpio expression of love. So, for example, Scorpio needs the sexual connection first to feel a close soulmate bond with somebody, whereas Pisces needs that soulmate connection on the spiritual plane or on the heartfelt plane first before they feel able to make the sexual connection or enjoy the sexual connection. So they're kind of the antithesis of one another in many ways. But in this case, that is going to heal the soul in this lifetime, being with your soulmate. I'll use the story of Kathleen O'Hara once more. And I mentioned this, I think, when I was talking about, was it Gemini? One of the other signs. Anyway, if in Kathleen O'Hara and her lover who passed away in the Civil War, both reincarnated today, they may have one or both had Venus in Pisces. And what they would do is come together as two soulmates reuniting to fulfill the lost promise of the previous lifetime. And then they come together and we are healing the soul, having this beautiful expression of soulmates coming back together, reconnecting and having the beautiful union that they missed out on in past lifetimes. On that topic, Venus in Pisces people, there are other things to look for that indicate that in karmic astrology. So it's not just Venus in Pisces alone. There are other connections that show soulmates, that show, having had past lives together and experienced connection with one another, be it in an intimate way or in a familial way or a boss or a brotherly way or whatever. There's many other indicators to reveal these types of connections in astrology. But this is the end of our journey with the soul's evolutionary intent for relationships in this lifetime. I do hope this video has been a blessing to you and given you some aha epiphany moments. Don't forget, if you're interested in learning more about karmic astrology and why your soul is journeying the way it is, the full course is available through the link in the description below. And if you order soon, for a short time only, the price is only $150 and you get a free goddess report from me as well. I look forward to joining you for the Karmic Astrology Series Masterclass. Do head to the Learn Astrology page and I'll catch you there.